The hospital hallway was busy. Daniel Ross, a single dad and dedicated orderly, stayed past his shift to gently help a frail patient toward the exam room. Suddenly, Director Miranda Hale, notorious for her strict rules, appeared. Seeing Daniel past his clock, she snapped loudly and coldly, "You are fired for illegal triage. Leave my hospital now." His daughter Lily, watching nearby, welled up. As Daniel took Lily's hand, ready to leave, the main glass doors burst open. A full Navy crew decked in serious rank powerfully stormed in. The chief petty officer yelled, "Where is Sir Ross?" The entire hospital lobby, usually a hive of frantic activity, froze solid. 8 Navy SEALs, clad in distinctive, impeccably tailored blue dress uniforms, moved with an intimidating military precision straight into the heart of the civilian building. They were an island of discipline in a sea of confused, terrified onlookers. The sudden, silent invasion was unnerving, generating an immediate, profound shift in the atmosphere. Dr. Miranda Hale whirled around, her carefully applied makeup unable to mask the sudden loss of color in her face. Yet years of demanding authority kicked in, and she instinctively tried to regain control, adopting her most authoritative, chillingly professional stance. "What is the meaning of this intrusion? This is a private civilian hospital, gentlemen. You need to identify yourselves and leave immediately." The lead officer, Chief Petty Officer Hayes, a massive man with shoulders that strained the seams of his uniform, did not spare her a single glance. His focus was absolute, his eyes scanning the room with the practiced intensity of a man looking for a target in a high-risk environment. Then he bellowed again, his voice echoing off the tile floors and marble columns. "Is Sir Ross present? We require his immediate attention." Every single person in the lobby, from the charge nurses and doctors to the janitorial staff and patients waiting for admission, turned simultaneously to look at Daniel. Daniel Ross, the man who had just been summarily and publicly dismissed 30 seconds ago for the crime of compassion, now stood at the center of the world. Daniel swallowed hard, his face flushing crimson with the agony of unwanted exposure. This was the exact scenario he had spent 7 years meticulously avoiding. He gently pulled Lily further behind his leg, attempting to disappear into the beige walls. "I am just an orderly," he murmured, keeping his voice dangerously low. "My name is Daniel Ross. I clean floors and move patients. You must have the wrong person entirely." Chief Petty Officer Hayes' grim expression softened into a slight, knowing grin. He marched directly to Daniel, stopping exactly 2 feet away. Then, in a movement that shocked every uniformed officer present, he snapped into a sharp, full salute. The kind of salute reserved only for the highest-ranking officer. The kind that conveys total, unquestioning subordination. "Mistake is impossible, sir. You are Commander Daniel Ross. The Bravo unit has encountered a critical situation and is still awaiting your orders." The entire hospital was now silent as the grave. The staff, who had often gossiped about Daniel's tired eyes and lack of ambition, were paralyzed with disbelief. Miranda Hale's mouth hung open, her perfectly manicured hand instinctively clutching the lapel of her blazer. "Commander." "What?" she managed to whisper, the word failing to form fully. The name Ross suddenly tasted metallic on her tongue. Daniel, mortified by the sudden blinding spotlight, looked around desperately, wishing he could vaporize. I resigned from the military years ago," he insisted, his tone a quiet, desperate plea for privacy. "I am a civilian now." Lily, however, was no longer upset. She was gazing up at her father, her small face a mixture of confusion, awe, and intense burgeoning admiration. "Daddy, you were a commander? Like in the movies?" Daniel quickly knelt on the hard floor, ignoring the pain in his knees, bringing his forehead to rest against his daughter's soft, warm cheek. He needed to anchor himself in the present reality of fatherhood. "A long time ago, sweetie. Now I am just your dad. That's the only rank I care about." His hidden past, the one he had buried beneath 7 years of crushing night shifts and anonymous physical labor, began to tear through the thin veil of his chosen obscurity. Daniel Ross was, in fact, the former commander of the elite Navy SEAL Special Unit, a ghost in the operational annals of military history. His tactical genius was legendary. He was the man whose split-second decisions had twice saved his entire team from seemingly inescapable ambushes deep behind enemy lines. He had carried his own men to safety more than once. The emotional cost of high-stakes command became too much the day his wife, Sarah, was tragically killed in a car accident. He needed immediate, complete emotional stability to raise Lily, and the anonymous, humble life of a hospital orderly provided the perfect camouflage. He deliberately avoided his substantial military pension, never wore his medals, and never ever spoke his true identity to a single person at Riverside. The hospital had been his sanctuary. It was predictable, mundane, and safe. His co-workers saw his dark circles, his worn shoes, and his humble, subservient demeanor, and they judged him as a failure, a man lacking the killer instinct required for success. They never saw the commander beneath the cheap, pale blue scrub shirt. Miranda Hale, witnessing the chief's unwavering salute and the deep respect in the eyes of the entire unit, slowly backed away. Her previous arrogance evaporated completely, replaced by cold, calculated terror. She realized with a wave of sickening clarity that she had just publicly humiliated, belittled, and fired a legitimate American legend, a man whose quiet competence kept her hospital running every night. The potential liability and media disaster were staggering. The surrounding staff exchanged stunned, fearful glances, none daring to speak, now terrified not of Miranda, but of the man they had dismissed as a glorified cleaner. Daniel turned back to the Navy crew, attempting one last, futile time to enforce his anonymity. "Chief Hayes," he said quietly, using the officer's rank, "I am not Sir. I am Daniel Ross, an orderly. That is all." The chief petty officer bowed his head even deeper, a gesture of profound, unshakable respect and loyalty. "Sir, you never stopped being our commander. You simply transferred command to a higher mission. We were never just loyal to the uniform. We were loyal to the man within it." Daniel was speechless, his chosen obscurity irrevocably shattered. The most important truth, however, came from the smallest voice. Lily, holding her father's hand tightly, looked up at the intimidating men, then back at her dad, asking in a barely audible whisper, "Daddy, are you a real hero? Like Captain America?" Dr. Miranda Hale, her mind racing, swiftly pulled Daniel into a discreet corner near the elevator bank, her voice trembling with forced authority and thinly veiled panic. "Ross, you were absolutely supposed to inform me you were a high-ranking officer, an operative of this magnitude," she hissed, attempting to assert some semblance of control over the explosive situation. "This is a serious security matter." Daniel met her panicked gaze with the clear, steady calm of a man who had stared death in the face and won. He had faced down armed hostiles with far less composure than he now showed this agitated, overdressed director. "I did not want anyone to treat me differently because of my past," he stated simply, his conviction solid. "I wanted to be seen for who I am now, a man trying to do an honest, useful job and raise his daughter. Rank is irrelevant here." Miranda's professional terror escalated. She had been operating on the assumption that Daniel was a disposable resource, a failure who couldn't find a better job. She gritted her teeth, her internal calculus screaming at her to mitigate the coming PR disaster at any cost. I withdraw the termination immediately. Consider yourself fully reinstated, effective now, with a pay raise and better hours. We value your service." Daniel shook his head once, a quiet but absolute refusal. "Thank you, Director Hale, but I will not return to a workplace where the leadership disrespects the patients or treats the most essential members of their own staff with such contempt," he said. His words, delivered without heat but with absolute authority, struck Miranda like a physical blow. Her entire successful career was built on the premise that status, title, and wealth deserved respect. Yet here was a man of the highest, most legitimate rank, demanding respect only for the lowest paid worker. The irony was suffocating. The Navy crew stood several feet away, perfectly still and completely solemn. Their collective, rigid posture only escalated the tension and fear among the remaining staff, creating a powerful, silent counter-narrative to Miranda's authority. They were her judge and jury. A movement in the crowd caught Daniel's eye. It was Mr. Henderson, the elderly patient Daniel had been helping. "Excuse me, Dr. Hale," the old man said, his voice weak but clear. "That young man saved my life last week. I had a subtle atrial fibrillation, and he noticed it instantly while helping me move. I have never met an orderly, or any employee here, so dedicated to true care. He is the only reason I am alive today." A wave of murmuring swept through the staff. Then another voice piped up, a young janitor named Maria. She leaned in timidly. "He works twice as hard as anyone else. He cleans up spills that no one else sees and never complains about the brutal double shifts we have to take. He covers for everyone." Miranda felt a wave of profound, acidic shame wash over her. She had been so focused on spreadsheets and protocol that she had judged the most valuable asset in the building based solely on a stained scrub uniform and a job title, missing the monumental integrity of the man entirely. Chief Petty Officer Hayes stepped forward, sensing the shift in the room's moral compass. He took this moment to quietly address a cluster of nurses and doctors nearby, speaking of Daniel's operational legend, with a reverence that was absolute. "He didn't just command, he led from the front," Hayes explained, his voice low and intense. "He led his team through 3 brutal, near-fatal ambushes. He sustained 14 separate injuries in his career, all while ensuring his men were extracted first." The chief's voice filled with undeniable pride. His code name was never just Ghost for his tactical silence. His actual internal unit title? The man who leaves no one behind. The young nurse who had snapped at Daniel just last week for being slow to clean a spill now covered her face and sobbed quietly, realizing the monumental, self-sacrificing figure she had addressed with such casual contempt. A senior physician, who had often joked that Daniel was too slow to move equipment, lowered his head in the silent apology. Daniel saw the nurse's distress and walked over, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. He gave her a gentle, tired smile, his compassion immediate and genuine. "It is all right. We all make mistakes. I know everyone here is under immense pressure." His forgiveness was not just for her. It was a blanket pardon for the whole stressed-out hospital. Meanwhile, 2 Navy officers carefully lifted Lily onto their shoulders, treating her like the daughter of royalty, protecting her from the emotional storm. The chief addressed the little girl, his powerful voice softening to a reassuring rumble. "Your father is the bravest, kindest man in the entire unit, young lady. He taught us everything we know about how to fight and how to care." Miranda retreated further, the vast, echoing lobby shrinking around her. She felt not only defeated, but morally bankrupt, exposed as small, narrow-minded, and utterly tyrannical. The humiliation peaked when Chief Petty Officer Hayes turned his full attention back to Miranda, his military composure now laced with controlled, deep anger. "This hospital was supremely fortunate to have him, Director Hale," he stated, his voice ringing with quiet finality across the silenced room. "Very few people, even 4-star generals, are afforded the respect of being called sir by my unit. You dismissed integrity in favor of a time clock." The Navy crew then executed another crisp, unified salute to Daniel, a powerful final testament to his worth. Then, they escorted him and Lily toward the exit. Lily, perched proudly on the chief's shoulder, looked back at her father, her eyes shining with newfound understanding. "Dad, you are the kindest, best man in the whole world, and you don't even need a cape." Daniel's only response was a silent, relieved smile. Dr. Miranda Hale, her perfect facade crumbling, frantically called an emergency meeting with the hospital's executive management team moments after Daniel and the Navy crew departed. The conference room was tense, thick with the scent of fear, fury, and professional ruin. That interaction was caught on multiple surveillance cameras. The Chief of Staff, Mr. Thompson, worried aloud, his hands shaking. "The video is already being shared internally and will be viral by noon. If the public hears we fired a triple-decorated war hero for helping a patient, our reputation, our federal funding, will be ruined." Miranda paced the length of the massive mahogany table, running her hand through her perfectly styled hair, her control fraying. Stop talking about the PR. We have to address the immediate consequence and somehow prevent this from destroying us entirely. But just as she moved to close the door and lock the world out, the Navy crew, led by Chief Petty Officer Hayes, stood waiting outside. Hayes didn't knock. He simply opened the door, his uniform and presence imposing in the high-ceiling room. He placed a thick, classified file dossier directly in front of Miranda. "This is the military record of Commander Daniel Ross, sir," Hayes announced, his voice flat and devoid of warmth. "I suggest you read it. All of it." Miranda scanned the documents, her eyes darting across the heavily redacted lines, but stopping at the massive, bold headings. Her face grew paler, the blood draining away with every line she processed. The Distinguished Service Cross for Valor, awarded for single-handedly holding a position to allow the evacuation of his team, sustaining 2 bullet wounds in the process. Personally led the operation that saved 19 civilian hostages, a mission deemed impossible by 3 allied governments. Risked his career and took a bullet to personally ensure the safe evacuation of Chief Hayes from enemy territory. The incident for which Hayes felt such profound, lifelong loyalty. A hospital administrator gasped, covering his mouth. "Dear God, we didn't just fire an orderly. We fired a national treasure, a living legend." Hayes's eyes narrowed, his gaze locking onto Miranda. "He is more than a legend. He is the reason I, and half of Bravo unit, are breathing today. He left everything to be a father, and you treated his sacrifice like a joke." Suddenly, the meeting was violently interrupted by a desperate shout from the hallway. A code blue was in progress. A patient in critical condition, a tourist visiting the city, is being rushed into the ER, suffering from acute cardiac arrest following a massive pulmonary embolism. Chaos erupted outside the conference room. "We are short-staffed in trauma too," a nurse screamed, frantically prepping the defibrillator paddles. "Doctor, Peterson is stuck in surgery. We need backup." No one on the floor has the specific skills to properly assist in this complex, multi-system trauma case right now. Daniel, who had been sitting calmly with Lily near the staff exit, heard the alarm. The specific tone, the elevated panic in the nurse's voice. Without a second of hesitation, his years of ingrained training kicked in. He gently handed Lily to Chief Hayes. "Watch her, Chief," he commanded, his voice already transformed. Then he sprinted into the ER, shedding his civilian composure like a skin. He took immediate, non-negotiable charge of the chaotic scene, his voice transforming from the soft, quiet tone of a father to the sharp, unwavering command of a Special Forces tactician managing a hostile extraction. He coordinated the room in a flash, his actions overriding the stunned hospital staff. Delegated specific, concise roles to the stunned doctors and nurses who instantly recognized the sound of authority they rarely heard. Maintained absolute calm under extreme pressure, his focus laser-sharp on the patient's deteriorating vitals. Performed chest compressions with military-grade precision and rhythm, ensuring maximum efficiency. Applied advanced combat medical techniques for stabilization, including a rapid, improvised procedure that bypasses standard protocol but buys critical seconds. The entire team of highly trained hospital doctors stood transfixed as Daniel stabilized the patient in under 3 minutes, his hands moving with impossible fluid efficiency, his presence a stabilizing force. He didn't ask permission, he simply executed. How did an orderly know all this? The speed? The procedure? It's not in any civilian handbook, a seasoned ER doctor stammered, staring at Daniel in utter disbelief. Daniel, his breathing finally slowing to a normal rhythm, wiped the sweat from his brow, already stepping back from the patient. "I have had to save lives under much worse conditions, doctor," he stated, referring to field combat. "Not a sterile hospital room." He glanced toward Miranda, who was watching from the doorway. Miranda, observing the raw, selfless leadership, the saving of a human life that had nothing to do with protocol or profit, felt her heart, long hardened by corporate ambition, finally crack wide open. This was true worth. Twist 2. The hospital secretary, eyes wide with terror, burst into the ER, phone clutched in her hand. "Dr. Hale, the Department of Defense is on the line. They are demanding to know why we fired their hero. This is a code red at the highest level." Miranda began to shake uncontrollably, the full crushing weight of her moral and professional failure crashing down. The world was now judging her, not by her degrees or her title, but by her humanity. Daniel, seeing her distress and sensing her impending collapse, walked toward her, his tone softening instantly from commander to compassionate counselor. "Please don't blame them, Miranda. The staff and board are just reacting to pressure. Everyone makes mistakes." His act of forgiveness, yet another impossible, immediate kindness, was devastating to her. Miranda finally broke down completely. She collapsed against the doorway, deep, wrenching sobs racking her body, a display of raw, unrestrained emotion none of her staff had ever seen. She finally marched back out into the hallway, standing before the gathered staff, her voice choked with tears and humility. "Daniel," she wept, "I am sorry. I have been blind. I judged you, and all of you, based on status and title, not on merit or humanity." Daniel nodded, accepting the apology that represented her total surrender. "I forgive you, Director Hale, but I will not return to work here if this hospital continues to treat its most vital, lowest paid workers with disrespect. That is my only condition." The chief petty officer and the Navy crew, their mission complete and their commander's dignity restored, offered one last, silent, deeply respectful salute as Daniel took his daughter's hand and walked out, leaving a stunned, reformed, and completely transformed hospital behind him. In the immediate wake of Daniel's public departure, Dr. Miranda Hale initiated a radical, system-wide, and comprehensive reform of Riverside Hospital. This was not a public relations stunt. It was an act of personal penance and professional awakening. Wage and benefit reform. She immediately increased the benefits and wages for all orderlies, janitorial, and cleaning staff by 30%, stating publicly that their work was the foundation of all patient recovery. Staff well-being policy. She implemented a strict new policy to reduce continuous night shifts and mandatory overtime, prioritizing staff well-being and acknowledging the crushing exhaustion Daniel had carried. The Code of Respect. Most importantly, she established a new zero-tolerance code of respect, mandating that all staff, regardless of title, treat each other with dignity, and that any report of condescension would result in disciplinary action. The employees were deeply touched and incredibly grateful. Daniel, the humble orderly who cleaned up after everyone else, had become the unlikely accidental catalyst for genuine, lasting institutional change, simply by refusing to accept disrespect. Though he was no longer officially employed, Daniel continued to visit the hospital, checking on the patients he had befriended, particularly Mr. Henderson. The doctors, now deeply impressed and humbled, often invited him to assist in teaching essential emergency stabilization techniques to the ER team. His combat medical experience, honed in life-or-death situations, proved invaluable in improving their disaster response protocols. Chief Petty Officer Hayes and the local Navy detachment became regular, quiet visitors to Lily. They treated her like the daughter of a national figure, bringing her small, personalized gifts and reading her bedtime stories. One day, Hayes pinned a miniature, unofficial badge of honor onto her backpack. "You are the daughter of courage and compassion, young lady," he told her seriously. Lily, bursting with pride, showed the badge to her friends at school, telling them her dad was a kind-hearted superhero. Miranda, determined to demonstrate her gratitude and genuine remorse beyond the professional, invited Daniel and Lily out to dinner for a non-work-related evening. She chose a small, quiet Italian restaurant far from the hospital. At the restaurant, she spoke honestly, the cold corporate facade finally gone, replaced by a nervous, tentative warmth. "Daniel, I spent my life valuing power and titles. You, a man who gave up everything, walked in and dismantled my entire worldview. You changed this entire hospital. No one else could have done it." Daniel smiled gently, reaching across the table to pour Lily a glass of water. "I just wanted to do the right thing, Miranda." That's what Sarah, my wife, taught me. Miranda looked at him, her gaze lingering far longer than necessary. She saw a man of deep, unshakable character, whose quiet inner strength dwarfed her own loud, superficial power. The high-strung, perpetually angry director was slowly giving way to a softer, more reflective woman who was actively seeking goodness. Lily, completely comfortable with the formerly intimidating director, suddenly climbed out of her chair and hugged Miranda's leg, sensing the genuine connection. This spontaneous act made Miranda laugh, a full, genuine, and unrestrained sound that echoed across the quiet room, the first she had truly enjoyed in years. As the evening ended, standing by the curb under the warm glow of the streetlights, Miranda asked Daniel, her voice soft, vulnerable, and infused with hope. If I wanted to see you and Lily more often, purely as friends, to share a life outside the hospital, would that be all right? I think I need your world more than mine." 1 month later, Daniel's world found its new equilibrium. He received a formal letter from the Department of Defense. It was not a summons to return to command, which he would have instantly declined. Instead, it was an offer for a consulting role in humanitarian and disaster rescue training. The job was a perfect fit, completely non-hazardous, flexible hours, and entirely project-based, allowing him to work from home and maintain his primary, sacred duty of being Lily's father. Daniel was deeply moved, realizing his immense sacrifice had not cost him his ability to contribute meaningfully. His unique, life-saving skills, earned through combat and loss, were now being used to train others for peace and recovery. Lily's bond with Miranda blossomed from hesitant friendship to true affection. She drew Miranda vibrant, multicolored pictures and eagerly shared stories from school. Miranda quickly became the person both Daniel and Lily looked forward to seeing every weekend. She was not a replacement for Sarah, but a necessary bright presence in their small family unit. Daniel observed Miranda's journey with quiet admiration. She hadn't just changed the hospital, she had fundamentally changed herself. She traded arrogance for humility, professional isolation for genuine connection, and found purpose in compassion. One cool evening, the three of them were sitting in the local park, sharing a ridiculously large tub of mint chocolate chip ice cream. Lily was nestled between the two adults, leaning her head against Daniel's chest and touching Miranda's arm. It was a picture of effortless, quiet joy. Miranda looked at Daniel, her eyes moist with unshed emotion. "You saved me in a way you don't even understand, Commander Ross," she whispered, using his title with respect, not irony. "You taught me that my worth isn't in my budget or my degree, but in how I treat the people who can do nothing for me. You taught me how to be human again." Daniel reached out and squeezed her hand gently, his thumb tracing the soft skin. "And you helped me see that the world still has room for good people, Miranda, even in the biggest, most cynical organizations. You gave me hope for humanity again." Lily wrapped her small arms around both of them in a spontaneous, powerful hug. She squeezed tight. "We are family now, right? Can we be a team?" Miranda laughed, the tears finally falling, tears of genuine happiness. "If your daddy agrees, sweetie, then yes. I would love to be on your team." Daniel looked at the two most important people in his world, his brave, bright daughter, and the woman who had unexpectedly healed his heart. A deep, lasting warmth settled in his chest, a feeling far more precious than any military victory. His voice was warm, resonant, and certain. "I agree. I agree to that more than anything." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet, the Navy crew's command vehicle quietly drove past the edge of the park on a routine patrol. Chief Petty Officer Hayes saw the scene. The legendary Commander Ross, his daughter, and the reform director sitting together, sharing a moment of perfect, ordinary peace. Hayes pulled over to the side of the road, putting the vehicle in park. He smiled, his voice filled with reverence and a quiet satisfaction. "The commander has finally found where he truly belongs, son. He's home." If you believe stories like this, showing the immense power of quiet integrity and true leadership, deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe to LT Stories.